Oh, I can't remember that. I suppose when I received my first go-kart in, I don't know, 93, 94, the first few laps for sure. I got a go-kart from my dad for Christmas and I was maybe 5 years old, so it's difficult to say what I thought back then, but clearly I couldn't wait to drive it. But then when I really wanted to be a racing driver, I don't know, I was maybe 10 years old. I had done a few years of go-kart and I was loving it, and I wanted it to be my work and my job, basically.
The first time I realized I want to be a racing driver was probably when I was 4 or 5 years old. I was in Hockenheim and on the grandstand watching a race, and since then, yeah, I always wanted to be a race driver. So yeah, I remember the first memory of kart racing, and I remember that I wanted to race. We went there to the track and I wasn't allowed to drive because I didn't have a kart license. So I was really sad. We had to go again the next week or the week after to do the license, and I was a really, really sad kid that time.
The first time that I realized that I wanted to be a racing driver was, I reckon I was about 3 or 4 years old. Apparently I was 3 or 4 years old and I was going around telling everybody that I wanted to be a racing driver. So I've had this ultimate goal, ambition and dream since I was a kid. The first time I stepped in to drive a go-kart was on my 8th birthday. I was at Silverstone and they had to shove so much foam behind me that I was barely in the seat anymore. My dad had to get his mats out of his car and fold them up and put them behind the foam as well. I was barely in the seat because I was so small, but I enjoyed it and that was the start.
The first time I realized I wanted to be a race driver is when I drove the go-kart for the first time in my life. So my father bring me to like a go-kart school, and I remember I drove for the first time. I was completely in love. Then he bought the go-kart, he put the go-kart inside the car, and then I was living in the small town, which was 2 hours from São Paulo. So I traveled from São Paulo to this town that I was living when I was a kid, which is like 2 hours, 2 hours 30. I was inside the go-kart. You know, my father was driving the car and I was inside the go-kart for these 2.5 hours. So I was sure I wanted to be a racing driver, you know. And definitely when I won, I would say I went to Europe to race Formula Renault, and I won both championships, the Italian championship and the European championship on the same year, which it never happens before. So after I managed to achieve that, I started really to think that I have big chance to become like really a good professional driver.